Light as a feather, stiff as a board. Light as a feather, stiff as a board.
We are the weirdos, mister.
Black as night, erase death from our sight. White as light, mighty hectate make it right.
I myself am strange and unusual.
Cast a circle, spark some incense, and grab a cup of tea. It's time for the Cousins Coven podcast. I'm Sharon.
And this is Wendy. Welcome back to the Coven, you guys. We're so happy to have you here.
Yay! Another episode.
Yes. I hope everybody's digging our new format, kind of. We've really sticking with the Pacific Northwest, and I'm loving it.
Yeah, it's really fun. I feel like there's less pressure and we have more time to research. And so we found this good balance that we have been striving for.
Yes. I like this every 2 weeks. We record pretty much almost every week, but for you guys, we air them every 2 weeks. And that's been very helpful because we don't always have time to edit them in time. So we don't feel as rushed and it just feels nice.
Yeah, I think we slowed down this whole conveyor belt just a little bit so we can relax and kick it sometimes too.
Because it is really freaking hard to fit in all the things that you love when you have to work all the time and you've got responsibilities as an adult, but you still want to have fun.
Yeah, there's something good about podcasting where it's a super fun hobby, but at the same time, once you start, it's like, this can't stop. This machine has to keep going. And so it's been interesting for sure. Thank you for anyone who's been along this journey with us and found our podcast. So
yes, I know we're way behind on getting the next newsletter out, and I haven't even started it, and we should have already had it out by now. So
look, we can't always be on. There's always something we're going to be behind on, and I'm okay with that.
I'm like, it's coming. I promise I'm going to work on it. just gotta find some time. I was playing Animal Crossing the other day, and I needed to tell you this. It is kind of hilarious, but you know how and maybe, I don't know how many people out there are actually still playing this game or not, and I'm way behind the curve.
No.
Played it late. But anyways, when your tools expire, they say, "Oh, thank you for your service."
Oh my God.
And I have been saying that for years. For every time I get rid of something that I've used or broken, I'm always all, "Thank you for your service." I literally have said that way before Animal Crossing. So when my character does it, I'm like, she's just like me.
That is so cute. I didn't really think of that, but for me, that concept stems in my life because of Marie Kondo's when I first heard of that, when she has her cleaning methods of okay, you're gonna get rid of something, you don't have to be sad about it, you thank it, you kind of hug the shirt you're donating to Goodwill and then put it to the side. And so that is so Marie Kondo.
I know, and she says it the exact way, because that's exactly how I say thank you for your service. I
it's literally a war vet.
I'm just thank you so much for your service. You've really served me well.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. I love you. May you bring somebody else good blessings.
There's something that you can make spiritual about Animal Crossing. I love. I made another temple in my little city again, and so I found these patterns that have these Celtic, almost I forget the name of it, but it starts with a T. It's not a triquetra, but it's the spiral version of the triquetra.
Oh, okay.
And Triskelion, maybe? I'm not saying that right, but I put it on the ground and I added candles and all these cool panels, and I was like, it looks like a temple, and I'm gonna go here and do my virtual magic.
That's so cool.
And there's certain places in the game where those balloons will spawn, and when the balloon's floating over your character, you want to hit it with the boomerang and get a present. And I always say, oh, the sky gods have given me a gift, the sky gods. And so I'm in the temple getting them down. I'm what have the sky gods given me? Is it a sign? I just love to escape this world entirely.
That's so cute.
Oh, I've got dog action.
Yo, Barky. Yeah. I mean, that's so cute. I'm not quite there in the game yet, but maybe eventually. I'm still like figuring the ins and outs of the game, you know? Like, I just found out that you could eat a peach and move a whole tree. So,
Oh my god, yes, yes. I recommend some YouTube videos that have like the secrets of Animal Crossing, like all the little secrets.
gotcha. I try to figure stuff out on my own.
I like
That's
that
like how I
too.
am in life. So,
Yeah, I like that.
yeah. So, I'm trying to figure as much out. Um, so, I finally got my first COVID shot
Oh, nice.
and had some adverse reactions to it. Like, as per the usual, I'm always getting the worst symptoms, I feel like, of something. So I know we took last week off because I was sick and it was not great. Like, I still feel pain like in my back, like up my spine, but this is not to discourage anybody. I still feel like everybody should be getting the vaccine because you know, we got to get that herd immunity so I can actually see you. I miss you. I miss doing things. And
Aw.
I know we did something like before we even got the shots, but I didn't feel quite safe. Like, I feel like we need to get these so we can start doing things.
Okay. Sorry. I just had
That's
my
okay.
little niece open my door. I did put a sign on my door that I am recording, but she probably does not read that because she's 5, so it's cool.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, no, this is obviously being recorded a little bit, like we're always like a month or so ahead before these
Yeah.
air. So by the time this airs, we'll both have our second shots.
Yes.
I'm getting my second shot this week and I'm kind of excited to get it out of the way, but like nervous to see how bad the symptoms are because they're saying round 2 is when it could really like mess up your day or give you like chills and fever or like flu-like
Right.
symptoms. And so I'm kind of nervous, but also like excited because it is a valid excuse for me to have 2 days off from work.
Right. As you're just lounging in bed. I finally ordered Discovery Plus, so I've been like in my downtime, or I shouldn't even say in my downtime, while I'm working, I'm watching TV. That sounds like I have the best of both worlds because I'm working from home, so I can still have TV on in the background because I'm
So
not on
jealous.
the phone. I know, I'm so sorry. This isn't to throw it in anybody's face, but I've been like binging different TV shows on Discovery Plus.
I've had jobs where I've been able to watch TV before, like Netflix on your cell phone, like in between
Yeah,
customers. So, like, not that I haven't had that situation before, but it is nice
right.
when you can get
It
paid
is.
to watch TV.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still working my butt off, don't get me wrong, but
You're multitasking.
yeah, multitasking. I love it.
Oh my gosh. So, should
Oh
we
my
get
gosh.
into today's
Yes,
thing?
let's get into today's thing. So today we're talking about the Rajneesh movement, which started in India and came all the way over to Oregon, and we'll kind of go into the ins and outs of it. I got most of my information from their website. The website of Rajneesh has osho.com now, and so it kind of talks about all these different things of where Osho came from, and I'll talk about Osho in a little bit.
Nice.
But yeah, so from there, and then also there was this documentary that came out called Wild Wild Country that came out a couple of years ago. I think we've wanted to talk about this for a while, but didn't really want to broach on the subject because it is kind of cultish in a way. I lived through this, so I have memories of it.
I'm so excited that you chose to talk about this. I think for me, I always like get overwhelmed when there's so many facts and history to like translate. Like we have to be the gatekeepers of this information and share all the information. Like sometimes I'm just like, oh, it's too big. But I got really into it after the documentary in 2018, Wild Wild Country. Like a lot of people just like binging that shit and wanting so badly to talk about it with someone. So it's like 2 years later and I'm finally able to talk about it with you. So I can't wait.
Yeah, I think I didn't want to watch it in the beginning because I did know a little bit about it since this did happen when I was a child. And I know those are childhood memories, but I feel like I learned something about myself that I've always felt this way about this topic. And I'll kind of get into that later when we're at the end really talking about our feelings. But I was like, Oh shit, I've always been this way.
A little like moment of realization. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Yay!
Yeah,
I'm so
so
excited.
that's exciting. So let's start by talking about the leader of the Rajneesh movement first, because in order to talk about the movement, we need to talk about the players a little bit. And I feel like since he was the leader, we should talk about Osho. So that's not his real name, by the way. That's just what people called him later on down the road. But he was born December 11th, 1931, and he was the firstborn son of 11 kids. Um, and when he was born, they named him Chandra Mohan Jain. And Chandra means the moon or god of night.
Nice.
And so Chandra's equivalent, because that's an Indian name. Chandra's equivalent would be like in Greek mythology would be Nyx, and Egyptian mythology would be Nut. And it's really interesting because, like, as I was reading about him, there were all these names that came out. Some people called him Rajneesh. That's where the name Rajneesh movement came from. They called him Rajneesh, and this was a name he was given as a child. So like his friends called him Rajneesh, and I couldn't figure out what Rajneesh meant. Like I looked all these different things. I couldn't figure out if there was a meaning why they would call him that, because his name, like if you give somebody a nickname, usually it's just something like, hey, Cher, instead of Sharon, or I'd call you something, something that would be based on your name or had to do with you. But Rajneesh is an actual name, and there were no meanings to it, which I found really interesting. Some people called him Acharya or Acharya. I'm so sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong. And so they would call him Acharya, which was teacher. Some people would call him Bhagwan, which means guru. And then he wanted to be called Osho because in Japan, that translates to high-ranking Buddhist monk. So he wanted to be known as Osho. So it's not that he renounced any of these other names. He just preferred Osho over the others. I found out that he was a descendant from Taranpant Jain, which is the founder of an offset of Jainism. So Jainism is this kind of like old religion in India that kind of stems from like the 300s, but then Taranpant was his like Osho's great grandfather. And this dude, or not great, it's like so great back that it's like from the 1500s great. So however far back that is from when Osho was born. But Taranpant, he was kind of this person who started an offshoot of Jainism. And I wanted to talk about Jainism, but I don't want to get religious about it. Like Jainism is just this really old religion that they believed in. They believed that in consciousness and all of this other stuff. Well, Taranpant is sort of the same way. He came in and he wanted to teach people how to be a mystic. And he rejected like authority and believed in enlightenment. And that that thinking, that wave of thinking was like given out in his family throughout the years. And when Osho grew up, he had this instilled in him, this from a very young age, like from birth, almost like it was in his soul that he wanted to become enlightened. So at the age of like 6 and 7, he was already searching for enlightenment.
That's
and there
awesome.
aren't very many people out there who are looking for that.
Not at 7 in the playground.
Right. right. So like he already knew that, but I think it was because his grandfather died around that age. And so for him, his grandfather died and he was like, what is death? what is it about death, and how can I be okay with death? And his family allowed him to grow up with his grandparents until he was like a teenager, I think. And so he lived with his grandparents, and they pretty much let him learn his own things, do his own things. And he renounced authority from a very young age. So even prior to his grandfather passing away, he didn't want to have to listen to rules and things like that. And I thought it was really important that we talk about where he came from so that you understand more about his cult mentality when we get into the cult part of him. So his grandfather died when he was young. He had this cousin who died when he was a teenager that it's kind of weird with Indian culture. At least it's weird in the minds of us Americans, but he was kind of betrothed to his cousin. So he was supposed to marry his cousin. He believed that his cousin was his soulmate and that they were going to get married, but she died when he was 15. And so he lost that kind of love. So it was just another reason for him to keep searching for that enlightenment. So he just time after time after time just kept searching for this enlightenment year after year after year, wanting to know about what death was, wanting to know about how he could be okay with everything that happens, wanting to kind of transcend all of this worldly rules that we have.
That makes sense, because dealing with detachment. Yeah, for sure. You would want to you'd want to do enlightenment. It'd be easier if you're letting go of things, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, so in that enlightenment, he believed that he didn't want to listen to authority, like I was kind of talking before. He didn't want to fall in line in school. So like as a young grade schooler or whatever he was at, grade school, high school, it didn't matter. He didn't want to listen to anyone. He wanted to debate about everything, wanted to talk about how there were all these different perceptions of one topic. So like if they were talking about history in school, he wanted to debate about everything in a philosophical way, even at a young age.
Man, that's that annoying kid in class who always distracts the teacher and makes lessons take longer.
Yes.
But I feel like there's something commendable about being that kid, because you're not just like being a sheep going through the system. Like you're kind of already having outside thinking. When I was being shuffled through school, I definitely was like so introverted that I didn't dare like question anything.
Right. So, me too.
Yeah.
That's just how we were. We were trained to be that way.
Yeah. Be quiet and don't ask questions. Just go through.
Yeah. Yep. Well, there was one thing about him too I was reading that it said that even though he was unruly, he was also very smart. So he didn't have to study. So when they did tests and things, he always aced the tests. He just knew the answers to things. And in a lot of ways, I can relate to that because I was always that way in school too. Just like somehow, I feel like I cheated almost in a way. Like maybe I cheated myself, but like sometimes when I would sit down with the test, and this started when I was very, very young. Like I remember teachers having to take me aside and they wanted to test me for my intelligence, but somehow I just knew answers to things. Kind of like I do now.
Yeah, you're just accessing the Akashic record for your test.
Right. So like it didn't matter what subject it was, I just kind of knew the answers. Well, he was that way too. And I remember my teachers saying, we need you to show your work. How did you get to this answer? I was like, I don't know. I just knew this answer. They're like, you have to show your work. I'm like, I don't have to show my work. Why do I need to show my work? I knew the answer.
I like that.
So, that's kind of how Osho was. So I felt like I could relate to him in that aspect. Like I too was searching for enlightenment. But I didn't refuse authority. Like I still wanted to listen to authority, but wanted to be enlightened.
Right.
So by the time he got into college, he went to just this local college. And they ended up kicking him out because he had too many conflicts with the teachers, and he didn't want to fall in line, and he didn't want to listen, and he would interrupt and debate every idea that the professors were trying to teach. So he ended up going to a Jain college, which seems kind of wrong in a way because it was his family's college. So it was like owned by his family. So he went and he got a master's in philosophy at this Jain college. It allowed him to,
maybe?
right. But they allowed him to speak out at public events the second that he started going to college there. So in these public speaking events, he would just talk about different philosophies about life and how we should be living it, or not how we should be living it, but how he wanted to be living his life. And people just would come to these events and see him, and he had this something about him that people wanted to follow him. They wanted to be with him. They believed every word that he said. And it was, I don't know if it was his tone of voice, if it was the actual words he was saying, or his aura that drew these people into him. But people wanted to follow him. And I mean, obviously that's why he was such a prominent guru, I feel like, was the reason, part of the reasoning why he wanted to join the cult. Or I shouldn't call it a cult. That's not what he called it. He called it a commune. Why people wanted to join the commune was because he had this persona about him.
I have a hard time like connecting with that reason in watching just the documentary Wild Wild Country. I'm like, you can't feel it. For me personally, watching it, maybe you did have to be in his presence, and like people in the interviews are talking about how like, oh, being in his presence, you were just drawn to him and like a magnet. Yeah. So it's like he must have had that moth to a flame like aura like you're talking about. I don't know, like, do you get that vibe from him that he has this presence? Yes. Or what are your thoughts on that?
I totally feel like it. The way in the documentary, there was this woman named Ma Anand Sheila who, when she talked about meeting him for the first time, she was like, there's nobody else in the world. There's just him. Like, he had almost like a God persona from the way that she described him. And he wasn't she wasn't the only one who said that. Like, I went online and was reading different, that's so cute. Was that a cat or a kid? So cute.
That was a little cat. Meow.
I swear that your cat was responding to me.
Osho. Yeah.
I just feel like after everything that I read, there were report after report of just, being in his presence. So I believe it. I read a little bit of his writings, and I came across this one about how he became enlightened. And I really wanted to share it with everybody so you could kind of get the gist of where he was coming from and why people would be drawn to this. He says, and like, I'm reading a direct quote from his book. So it says, just before the 21st of March, 1953, 7 days before I stopped working on myself, a moment comes when you see the whole futility of effort. You have done all that you can do and nothing is happening. You have done all that is humanely possible. Then what else can you do? In sheer helplessness, one drops all searches. And the day the search stopped, the day I was not seeking for something, the day I was not expecting something to happen, it started happening. A new energy arose out of nowhere. It was not coming from any source. It was coming from nowhere and everywhere. It was in the trees and in the rocks and the sky and the sun and the air. It was everywhere. And I was seeking so hard. I was thinking, it is very far away, and it was so near and so close. Just because I was seeking, I have become incapable of seeing the near. Seeking is always for the far. Seeking is always for the distant, and it was not distant. I had become farsighted. I had lost the nearsightedness. The eyes had become focused on the far away, the horizon, and they had lost the quality to see that which is just close surrounding you. The day effort ceased, I also ceased, because you cannot exist without effort, and you cannot exist without desire, and you cannot exist without striving. The phenomenon of the ego, of the self, is not a thing. It is a process. It is not a substance sitting there inside you. You have to create it each moment. It is like pedaling a bicycle. If you pedal, it goes on. And if you don't pedal, it stops. It may go a little because of the past momentum, but the moment you stop pedaling, in fact, the bicycle starts stopping. It has no more energy, no more power to go anywhere. It is going to fall and collapse. The ego exists because we go on peddling desire, because we go on striving to get something, because we go on jumping ahead of ourselves. That is the very phenomenon of the ego. The jump ahead of yourself, the jump in the future, the jump in the tomorrow, the jump in the non-existential creates the ego, because it comes out of the non-existential is like a mirage. It consists only of desire and nothing else. It consists only of thirst and nothing else. It consists only of future and nothing else. The ego is not in the present. It is in the future. If you are in the future, then the ego seems to be very substantial. If you are in the present, the ego is a mirage. It starts disappearing. The day I stopped seeking, and it is not right to say that I stopped seeking, better will be to say the day seeking stopped. Let me repeat it. The better way to stop it is the day the seeking stopped, because if I stop it, then I am there again. Now stopping becomes my effort, not stopping becomes my desire. The desire goes on existing in a very subtle way. So basically he was saying that he had to stop seeking and he had to stop his ego because he kept thinking that he was living in the future and the past, and he was never living in the present.
Right. So present moment awareness is coming up, which is really popular with gurus and mental health, and
Right.
kind of like that whole let it go philosophy is something we hear a lot
Right.
too, which is like the key to connecting stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just muting my audio for a second. I was like,
okay.
actually, I'll be editing the audio, so no worries.
Oh, okay.
My
That's
God,
right. I forgot.
fucking fox. He's tearing up a box. Okay. These goddamn cats. Okay. I'm gonna pick it back up.
Okay.
So yeah, like let it go. You kind of have to like not focus so much on being in control of your enlightenment. Let it go. You can't focus so much on the end result. You have to let it go. And it's like kind of like chaos magic or anything when it comes to manifesting. Let it go, forget about it, and then shit falls into place. So like I kind of get where he's coming at for sure.
Right. But it's the words that he said. It's like when I read it the first time, and even when I was reading it out loud right now, because I am so sensitive to energies, like I felt his energy of his writing. And so as I'm reading it for the first time or the second time or the third time, however many times I've read it now, I feel a rush of energy go through my whole body. Like I can feel his energy through his writing. And so for me, I'm like, I'm glad I was a child when he was around, because I probably would have ran to him. I would have been like, I'm off to Antelope, Oregon. Bye-bye, family.
I was thinking that too. I was like, what? Like, I'm such an introvert, and I like having my personal lifestyle. Like, I need my video games, my pets, my boyfriends, my friends. Like, I can't detach and like have that mentality where you're only part of a group. Like I like too much of my individualism, I think. But what would be the perfect storm to make me join the Rajneeshis would be like you and me went and like we're on a walk in a park, maybe talking about our podcast, and we like enter into a time slip, kind of like just go back in time, and it's like we're us now, maybe, or maybe us time slip into our 20-year-old selves. That way we don't have boyfriends, because this would never work.
Yeah,
joining a sex cult right now.
And I was really hot then.
Yeah, your inhibitions are low. You're not attached. Yeah. Like we would have to like time slip into our 20s, and then go back into the 80s, and then just find like some Rajneeshis who are doing recruiting, and then I think we'd have like this amazing time slip.
It would be great. It would be great. Oh man. Okay, so now that we kind of know a little bit about him, like where he came from, where he was, let's kind of move forward in time a little bit. Well, move forward from his his gathering. He started like this commune in India, and thousands of people would go there each year. You barely had to pay any money, and some people didn't have to pay any money at all to go to this commune, but it was where people would go to just stop. Like it was basically detoxing from your life so that you could get this refreshing moment, kind of like a vacation. So people would go for a week, a month, go there to this commune, detach from their life, and then, let go of everything that was bothering them, let go of all the cares of the world, and then go back to their life after they were done. So you could come and go as you pleased, or you could live there every day of your life for a very small amount of money. And I mean, what are we always talking about? We would really like to have our own place that we could go to where we can believe what we want. Everybody is welcome. That's the kind of mentality that he had, was that we don't care if you're rich. We don't care if you're poor. We don't care what color your skin is. We don't care what your belief system is. You're welcome here. As long as you put into the environment, as long as, you do some gardening, wash some toilets, make some food, as long as you're giving to the greater good of our community, then you're welcome.
Right. And it's like, who gets that opportunity to detach from the work of every day, like that we keep complaining about? We're like, God, if I have to work every day and I could just work on my mental health, or just like maybe have some meditation to detach from my problems. And it's like such a great escape from the everyday problems to just go to this little, do they call it a param? What is it called?
Oh yeah, the param. Yeah.
Param, this little like
Mm-hmm.
commune, like you're
Ashram.
saying.
Yeah,
Ashram.
like,
Okay, I was like, what is it called?
ashram.
The ashram. So like how nice of an experience is that? And I think back then it wasn't as expensive to travel even
Right.
internationally.
Yeah, in the 80s, I don't, and like you didn't have to have as much, like now we have to have a passport and we have to have all these things. And I think back then you could just be like hopping on a plane, smoking on the plane, going over to this other country.
Yeah.
And the way people described it was that India is this bustling, this bustling country, like where this ashram was. I feel really bad I didn't look at it because we're really sticking to the Pacific Northwest, so I didn't really look too much into the his Indian commune. But basically, there was this whole city bustling up, and then in the center of this area where it was really noisy, you would go through these gates and then be into a whole different city, because his commune was so quiet and so loving and so open, and yes, very sexual, because they had a whole different set of belief systems in there, where they don't believe in marriage and they don't believe in just being with one partner, because the human instinct is to be with multiple partners.
Right.
And we know this is why cheating happens in our society, why people cheat on each other, because the ideal of I'm so sorry, I didn't mean that, my true self is coming out, because the ideal of most religions is that we're only supposed to be with one partner, and
right.
And our animal instinct ingrained in us from many millions of years ago is that animal instinct is to be with multiple individuals.
I'm kind of like a penguin. Like I'm cool with one person monogamy.
Right.
But
me
yeah,
too.
there are definitely the animal side where maybe you want to explore. And I think if you want to, it's an option, I guess. But what I like about them is that as far as a guru goes, he doesn't mind if you have sex, or I feel like some gurus would say like no sex, abstinence is the key to enlightenment. Yeah, so it's like this, he's kind of doing the old meets the new, and he's kind of finding this new middle ground. Maybe that's why he's so revolutionary. He's saying like it's cool to have luxury items like cars and watches. It's okay to have sex. It's okay to have indulgence and pleasure and enlightenment and meditation. So it's probably the first time that's being like sold to and packaged to people, this East meets West kind of mentality. And so that's
Right.
probably why it's really easy to get followers. Like, it's like, oh yeah, we can have sex and enjoy ourselves and meditate. I'm there.
Yeah. I'm into this. But
Yeah.
we are here on this earth to experience this earth. Whatever your belief system is, we don't know what comes after we die, but why shouldn't we partake in everything that earth has to offer?
Yeah, including the pleasures, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Because a lot of outlooks will promise all this kind of sex and stuff in the afterlife if you're a good person
Right.
in the earth. And it's like, no, just enjoy earth. And we don't
Yeah.
know what happens on the afterlife. So like let go of the idea that you do maybe, and just like
Right.
in present moment awareness.
Yes.
So I could see where like that Rajneesh mentality is really refreshing and and could draw you in.
Right. Right. So let's move forward a little bit more. There was this thing that happened in India. They talked about it in the documentary, and I did not write this stuff down because I'm not sure why, but basically there was this new government that was coming into India that would not allow you to have your own religions and your own religious beliefs. And so because of that mentality that was taking over, they wanted to shut down Osho's commune. And so they needed to find a new home. And there were some people that said, you know what, let's go to America because we're supposed to be able to have religious freedom in America.
Right. And it's like,
so,
I think it was Hindu. Like if you weren't Hindu, then you weren't welcomed because you weren't like in line with what was going on in the country.
Right. Right. Good. Thank you for knowing that. I did not. So it was like they decided to come to America, and specifically to Oregon, because they had read, they had lawyers in their commune, and those lawyers were saying, look, there are things that we can do in Oregon that we might not be able to do in other places in the United States. And so they found this wide open space in a little town in Eastern Oregon called Antelope. And let me tell you about Antelope for a minute. So this was 1981, old school Antelope, Oregon. And Antelope, Oregon is this small town in between Portland and Boise, Idaho. So it's like almost halfway in the middle between those places. So almost on the it's in the northern part of Oregon, close to the Washington border. And the people who live in this town have lived in this town their whole lives. Their grandparents are the ones that came in, pushed the Indians out, and took this land for themselves. And so they're real proud that they did this. These are proud people who have their own set of ideals, their own set of religion. They don't even have a school in this town. That's how small it is. Antelope is just so small. And I'm not saying that small town people are small-minded, because there are some great small towns in the United States. This is the part where this is why I didn't want to talk about this on podcast, because I want so bad to say my true feelings, and I feel like I shouldn't say them because I don't want to offend anybody.
I'm like, the people are here for it, Wendy, if they're listening this long.
I just feel like they came in with their own ideals, and the second that they knew that somebody was coming in and buying land near their town, they felt threatened to their ideals.
It's basically another, like, it's kind of what they were facing in India almost, you could say, like, oh, it's not Christian. So instead of being like, it's not Hindu, it's like, oh, they're not Christian, are they? And they're some foreigners there, and they're all dressing the same. What's going on?
Yeah. And they weren't cool about people being different. You're right. They didn't want people that were different than themselves. So anyways, the Rajneeshis, they bought 64,000 acres. It was this ranch called Big Muddy Ranch. And And this ranch really didn't have anything on it. I mean, it was just land. And so the commune, the people who had joined the commune, there were like, I want to say 6,000 of them. Yeah, there were a little over 7,000 people. I'm so sorry, 7,000 people. And over like a 3-year period, they spent time building basically a little town on the 64,000. And not only that, but they bought up some of the town of Antelope itself and kind of moved themselves in to the government of Antelope. Initially, they didn't buy anything in Antelope. The people of Antelope wanted to push them off that $64,000 ranch. And so remember in the beginning of this episode, I was talking about how Osho was like, I am not going to listen to authority. And so when people were saying they wanted to take his livelihood, that's when he turned around and said, okay, you know what? Let's buy some of the town up. Let's threaten them back, because he didn't want to he didn't want that authority telling him that he couldn't have his freedom.
Right. And like they did a lot of work in those 3 years. I have to like say and comment on that period because it happens in episode 2 of Wild Wild Country, and it's the part that like emotionally gets to me the most. It's the part that like makes me a Rajneesh sympathizer.
Right.
And I kind of glamorize their movement a lot and sympathize with them because it's like the land that they bought. Okay, it's a shit ton of land. There's a room for a lot of people. They wanted to make it like almost 10,000 people inhabiting this like ecosystem, this city that they built. And they said that when they got there, the land was non-farmable. There wasn't a lot of wildlife. There was no agriculture. They had all these planners and people who are like city planners and architects building and constructing everything from scratch, living off of the land, you could say, making it like efficient and just bringing back to life nature. You know, they started seeing the ecosystem coming back. They did a lot of hard ass work and labor, working day and night in these shifts and accomplishing this community and building it from nothing. And I think that is amazing. And like, if you were part of that time in history, like, can you imagine how much pride you'd have that like you built that place, you're living off that place, you all support one another, and you have this like amazing community. Like that just sounds so unique, and it warms my heart when I see that part. Like all these people in red, like happy and laughing as they're like working and gardening. Like that would be like a day's of work that you're proud of.
Right. And even if you didn't think that you had the strength to do it, all of these people were behind you saying you can do it. And so I loved how they talked about in the documentary that there were women out there driving the forklifts and swinging the sledgehammers and doing the hard nitty gritty work that we all have in us to do. And so for me, like, I was a contractor for a while. I know that sounds hilarious because like I'm a woman, right? And like in the early 2000s, I was swinging a hammer and I was laying down floor and I was putting up drywall, and I know how to do all that kind of stuff. And I'm just like, yeah, go ladies, go ladies. Yeah,
this is like, you know, it's labeled a cult, but we like to call it a group, a commune, a religion, because we're on that side. And like the women in this group, they have choices. It's not like the Manson family where it's like you're told as a woman, if a man comes on to you, you have to have sex with them because that's what you're here for. No. It's not like Mormonism where the women are controlled and trapped. Like everyone has a choice who they want to like hang out with. Yeah, they have to have a job and they have to contribute, like you were saying, but like no one's being forced, I don't think, against their will to do things. And I think that's really good for women. Like you can be in a relationship, you can add other partners into that relationship, but ultimately you're choosing.
Right. You're choosing it. Now, I think a lot of people who joined this this group, and I hate the word cult, by the way. I cannot stand that word. It is a derogatory term to me. So yeah, I like to call it a commune. When people call it a cult, I do feel offended. Like, I'm like, what did you call me? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, It is kind of like cringy. So I'm like, okay, what's the definition of a cult? And so it's like, it says it's a relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister. So that's just kind of like the other. If you're not the mainstream, then of course it's going to be strange and sinister because it's not what you like, what you're used to. And I
Right.
think that's one thing that gets really frustrating and stagnant and stale when you look at old like news reportings about the Rajneeshi. They're just judging. They're being such judgy people. It's just like,
Right.
look at these
Right.
weirdos and they're meditating and screaming. It's like, oh yeah, how dare they have a release and
Right.
a reflection period. Like, how
Right.
dare they not? Like, if you were to like film any religious service, whether it be a Catholic service on Sunday or like any religion, it's gonna have weird rituals to it that look weird to outsiders. It's gonna look a little culty. It's gonna look a little bizarre. So it's like super hypocritical, I think, to call one good and right and one
Right.
like one a religion and one a cult. What is the difference?
Right. I feel like the town just could not get over the fact that these people were having sex with each other. Like they said over and over again, oh, they're just having random sex. They can't even be with just one person. And I'm just like, okay, listen, they are all consenting. I never once in all the stuff that I read, never did I hear people were molesting children. Never did I
No,
hear somebody raped me. I did not get that at all. This was completely 100% consensual.
just adults like living their lives.
Right. They were okay if you wanted to sleep with just one person. If you wanted to sleep with multiple, that's okay too. It didn't matter. And a lot of times it didn't even have to do with the sex. It just had to do with about being together, living together in this loving environment.
Right. I
One
did love
thing
this
that they,
one. Oh,
oh,
sorry.
you go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Like, you reminded me of this one talking head interview of a lady when she was complaining about hearing the orgasms. And the way she complained about it was so funny. She's just like, all day they're having these erotic and orgasms so loudly. It's just like, maybe you should try having an orgasm yourself.
Yeah,
Like,
I was
why
like,
is that a problem? Like, I mean, sure, it's annoying if your neighbors, you could probably hear them having sex all day. I'm sure that could be annoying. And it also surprises me because they have that much land. Like, is it just echoing down the canyon into Antelope? Like, shit.
it was there. There is a giant canyon there and things do bounce off of each other. It does sound like a great echo, but I'm like, if everybody's orgasming at once, I'm like, damn, that puts me in the mood. That's all I would be thinking about. I'd be like,
get it on.
I'd be like, whoa.
Yeah, if this were like a
But
cute feel-good movie, it would have like opened the town of Antelope up to having like sexual liberation, which just even their own partners. It would have been like a cute like opening experience, like the movie Shock the Rock,
right,
but no.
they did not like that. So they did not like that at all. One thing I wanted to talk about was they called themselves sannyasas. And one thing I learned was that a sannyasa in Indian culture was somebody who lives their life and they no longer need or want things. And they just require peace. So they basically lead the simple life. They don't need to have things. They choose to have things. So that was why they all wore one color. They chose to wear like orange and pink and reds because that was the chakra alignment that they wanted to have. So reds has to do with the root chakra and the sacral chakra, which they're very sexual oriented people. So that has to do with the sacral. And also the enlightenment that they wanted to have. So those maroon colors, those pink colors that they wore has to do with the crown chakra. So they wore the colors in the way that they wanted to be aligned.
Oh my god, thank you for explaining that. I never realized why they chose that color. And sometimes when watching the documentary, Ma Anand Sheila, if I said that correctly, she would be wearing like purple. And I was like, wait, why is she gonna wear purple? I would totally be all about that purple. So it's because she was kind of focusing on that upper chakra.
Right. And I know I'm not really talking about Ma Anand Sheila a lot. I think they explained her side of the story quite a bit in the documentary. So if you want to hear from her side of the story, you can definitely listen to her. I didn't want to talk about her a whole lot. I feel like she was portrayed as a kind of a scapegoat in the film for Osho. And I feel like I just wanted to focus more on Osho in this talks that we're having today. What was I going to say?
I keep throwing off balance. Sorry, I'm just like, oh
no,
it's
okay.
They have a
It's
reason.
Totally okay. Yeah, they totally had a reason. So I was, at first I thought the same thing too, but then I was sitting down and I was thinking, I was like, I think these have to do with the chakras. And so I was doing some reading, and sure enough, it really did have to do with the chakras. So I really loved that. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, our audio. I had thought too, like, what an easy, fun Halloween costume. We should be Rajneeshis this year and just get like red yoga pants and get like that little bead necklace with Osho. And I feel like there would be people wwho were older or like who'd be like, what the fuck are Rajneeshi? And it would be like pissing people off, but it would be so comfortable.
I have this orange dress that I've had for years that is it's like a maxi dress. So it goes all the way past my feet actually and drags on the floor. And I was wearing it this week while I was preparing for the episodes. And I was like, I'm in it to win it.
You're literally the only person I can talk about this topic with and have like agreements. Everyone else is like, Sharon, they are a cult. Are you fucking crazy? You cannot sympathize with them. And I'm like, but no, I totally can.
There's a difference between this movement and a cult. So like, yes, I look at the Mansons and I would say that they were a cult because they murdered, they raped, they drugged, they did things non-consensually. Yes, I might consider that to be a cult, or I do consider that to be a cult. I do not look at the Rajneeshis.
There were some people in the group that did do those behaviors, and I feel like that was the problem. Like, I'm on board with the Rajneeshis until they did start doing crazy shit. I don't know if I'm jumping ahead, so we're not going to be talking about any of that.
We will talk about a little bit of it. So
okay.
I know that. So here's what I was going to go into next is that I feel like at the time period that this happened, like they moved in 1981. 3 years prior to that, there was something that happened in Ghana. Am I saying it right?
Ghana? I think so.
Yeah. So in Ghana, there was something called Jonestown that happened where a religious man came in. I'm not going to say which religion. I'm sure you guys can all jump to it. And there was a lot of molesting that happened, and everybody drank Kool-Aid and died. And so
I love how that's your description of Jonestown. They died. Yeah, they were forced into mass suicide and poisoning, and they lived in horrible conditions. It has no comparison to the Rajneeshis. Like the Rajneeshis have their own little like yurts and housing and comforts and a bank account and rights. Like I don't feel like people in Jonestown had rights.
Right, they did not.
They were trapped.
Rights. This was a totally different situation. So, but in the mindset of small town Oregon, they were thinking, oh, these people are going to be like Jonestown. And I can understand that to a point. I will say that in the newspaper at the time period. So let me just give you a little bit of backstory in my love for the newspaper as a child, because as a child, like starting at the time that I could read, my parents wanted me to read the newspaper. And so it was always provided every day to me to be able to read. So I, at a young age, was knowing what was happening in the world. So
that's adorable. I can see you at the breakfast table.
Just with my little paper. Whip it out. And like, I do have to say thank you to my parents, because as I was reading the paper, if they provided it to me, they also had to talk about things with me. So I did not come from the greatest household, but they did provide me certain luxuries that I feel like other kids did not have. So the openness of me to be able to talk to them about things that were happening in the world. So I got to talk about OJ's relationship with his wife, and I got to talk about Princess Diana and her relationship with her husband and things like that. And so when the Rajneeshis came out, and I started wondering, like I remember reading that they came into town, and Antelope immediately was putting stuff in the paper, calling people to come and write about what was going on, so that the whole state of Oregon realized what was happening, because they feared, in their closed-mindedness, they feared that the Rajneeshis were going to try to take over the state and that we would become a Rajneeshi state. And in the beginning, that was not how the Rajneeshis felt. But the second that they were provoked, they did want to make Oregon a Rajneeshi state. They said initially that they came here, and everything that I was reading, that they came here to wake Oregon up, to wake the people of America up, to see that we were being controlled and told what we should do. When Rajneeshis wanted us to believe that we had the freedom to believe the religion that we wanted to believe. We had the ability to love who we wanted to love, regardless of their status, regardless of their money status, their color, their job status. They wanted us to take away all those labels so that we could love people for who they were, not for what they were. That mentality was, along with all their other beliefs, was a threat to this little small town, Oregon. And just them saying it was a threat and wanting to threaten the Rajneeshis to push them out of that town made the Rajneeshis take actions that then led them down a path that made me not want to be a part of them. Because they started
it's like they
carrying
got backed
guns.
into a corner.
Yes, they got backed into a corner. So they wanted to defend their town, which I get. But remember how I said Osho, his last name was Jain. Now, this happened to the Jains, and this is why Osho had this mentality, because the Jains were a free-loving people, a free-loving religion. And they were then taught to be militia, because they were forced to stop believing in their free love. And so Osho had this mentality, not just him, but not Ma Anand Sheela, anybody who was from India had this sort of ingrained in them, I feel like. Just like we have things in our DNA, being Anglo, no matter where you come from, we all have something in our DNA that makes us act the way that we do. And so I feel like because he felt threatened, because Ma Anand Sheela felt threatened, they had to fight back, to fight for their freedom.
Yeah, I do agree with you. It's like the way they fought back was where they lose me. And they met violence with violence. So it's like, I'm pretty sure that the town of Antelope and others, like that bombing in their Portland hotel, started the physical violence. So they were attacked first. And their response to that was like, you're going to mess with us? We're going to mess with you, and we're going to get a bunch of guns and train everyone how to use guns. Because it's like the people of Antelope were threatening them and carrying pistols and sidearms and shooting rifles off into the air. And of course, like I mentioned briefly, their hotel in Portland got bombed, and they should have just remained political, almost like the Satanic Temple, who it's like they do not respond with violence. They only respond with like legal action and lawsuits so that they don't get in trouble and dismembered, of course, or dismantled. But that's
not dismembered.
Not anymore. We don't burn them anymore, the Satanists. But yeah, I think that's where the Rajneeshi, they crossed the line and fucked up. They started this war.
But that came from their Jain roots. That came from their roots. That's why they reacted that way. But yeah, you're right. That is exactly where they lost me too. I do remember in the beginning telling my parents, I was like, you know what? Like when I started reading about them, I was like, man, why do we have to fight? Why do we have to not accept them for who they are? Why do we have to cross these lines? and I remember talking to my parents, why are we so threatened by them? I remember asking my mom and dad, why do we feel threatened? Because their beliefs are different than ours. And my parents' response was always like, well, it's just not a part of our religion. I was like, well, we're not a part of their religion.
Right. Like, there should be room for both. And
yeah,
I think the Rajneesh did have like a vocabulary like, we are going to take over, we are enlightened and you are not. And so it is kind of like, we got to have room for both. We got to have room
but
for
I
choices.
feel that,
There's got to be
yeah,
room
but
for
I
everybody.
feel right, for sure. But I feel like in the beginning, that was not their intention. I feel like until they were provoked, I want to know how it would have been if they never would have been provoked. What would it have been like? Would they have branched out, or would they just have kept their doors open for anybody to come in?
Right, because that's a great point, because they wanted their city to fill like 10,000 people. They wanted to make it from a small like farming commune to an actual city, and they had the plans to do so. Like, could that have happened? And that's where Antelope got pissed. They're like, oh, you said you were going to be a farm, and now you're going to say you're a city? Well, we're going to destroy you. We can't handle a city going in and out of our retirement community. So like that need to control, the need to stop their progression is what really dismantled them. And yeah, I would have loved to see what could have happened if we didn't, put a stop to them.
Right. Well, I will tell you that they kept on going. The Osho Society kept going. They just moved back to India, and they're still there today. Granted, Osho died in 1980. Well, because they got pushed out in 1985, so they were there for 4 years. They got pushed out of Antelope in 1985. And he kept on going. They moved back there were a bunch of like legal things that happened that I feel like the documentary talks about that. I don't want to really go into the political stuff too much and all the things and all the fighting because it's so negative. But they were pushed out. They went back to India. Osho pretty much killed himself. They say he died of a heart attack. I think in 1990, but really what he did was he killed himself. He couldn't live in the society. He had these doctors around him, and he took this medication to kill himself. Because he felt that he wasn't right for this world, and he'd already reached his enlightenment.
And were they keeping him locked up when he got to India, or was he free?
No, he was free.
Okay.
He still lived in a commune. His commune was still going, and he had communes all over the world. So he still had a small land there that he owned, and he went back to that. And he did his talks, because at the time that he went back, I think the Hinduism was you weren't being forced anymore to do the Hinduism. Like, free religion was back again by the time he went back. So he was able to have his commune there, and he died, but Osho still lives on. So you can still go to the commune today, to this day. And so I was like, I wonder how much that would cost. So I actually looked into it, and like for a month, you could live there for $700 for a month.
Probably just have to clean some toilets, like you were saying, and meditate. Yeah.
I have to say that after they left, the land that they left behind was purchased by some rich dude in Montana, and then was gifted to the Christian Parachurch organization, where this group called Young Life goes every year to this resort. And Young Life, it's just a bunch of kids. And so the town, like in the documentary, they talk about how they were like, oh yeah, there's still noise that comes from there, but it's not sex anymore, so we're okay with it. And I'm like, you guys have no idea what Young Life is. There's still sex going on. They're just not talking about it. They're just not doing bad stuff.
Are fucking horny, let me tell you. Like, I remember just hearing rumors and stuff about like what goes on at Christian camp. It's like you have this idea of like oppression. I think that makes them more curious, and so like they'll do everything but, because it's just like, I'm still a virgin. So I
Yeah, I'm
feel like
still a
that's
virgin,
just
but
why. Yeah. So that's really
they just do it
disappointing. It's like the
quieter.
Raj. Oh yeah, they're not so free about it, and they're more ashamed about it, so they carry more guilt.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's really disappointing. It's like, okay, now that the cult ground is taken over by the cult that we approve of, it's okay, and it's really really
Right.
heartbreaking that like we as Oregonians are decided to draw these people out. Start violence and just take over the other, and it's really really disappointing.
Right.
But I
I
mean,
like to.
there are some things I feel like we glossed over that I feel like I have to talk about with you that
Okay.
are just so
Okay. Talk
massive.
to me. Talk to me.
So some of the major things in the documentary are obviously the salmonella poisoning and like all the homeless people that the Rajneeshis brought over. I feel like those two things are super fascinating, and I don't remember which one happened first. But
So the
I feel like we have to
poisoning
talk
happened
about that.
first. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
so
Let's talk about
yeah,
it.
so like
So
Sheila, I know you wanted to not talk about Sheila too much, but
it's okay. It's okay. Go ahead.
so yeah, so Sheila, one of her actions, I guess, was to like have this salmonella lab. She started creating salmonella or like designated people to do so that she could go out and attack different buffets in the Oregon area. And so
Hmm.
like there was these salmonella breakouts, no one knew what was causing it for a while, and then I guess there kept being all these investigations on the grounds because the government was trying to find ways to get rid of them. They found where they were making the salmonella, and I guess they pinpointed it to them, but like that is messed up. That's another major point where it's like, okay, they are poisoning people.
Yes. And that reached all the way down into Salem. So I will tell you that in the newspaper they were like, be careful because we don't know how far this reaches. So they were literally telling people, be careful about the food that you eat, whether it's eating out or in it, or you're buying meat from a store, because they were afraid that the salmonella was going to be in everything and the whole state was just going to be shitting themselves. So like, I
Yeah.
mean, we were told, watch what you eat, be careful how you cook things, be very careful.
Yeah, so I could see why there's a lot of fear with the Rajneeshis because a lot of the mainstream media has already built up this image that they're evil, and now they are literally doing messed up things. And so I
Right.
don't think that speaks for every person in a group. I think it speaks for how an organization can be tainted by individuals. And it did get super out of hand. And I guess jumping to like the whole voting situation, that they were like being pitted against this town again to have some sort of vote. I believe, I can't remember what they were voting for, but I think it was like for their rights to keep that town or something like that,
Yeah,
and
and
to
to
get more
change the name,
votes.
they wanted to change the name. Yeah,
Yeah, and
they
to get
wanted to
more
change
votes,
the
they
name of
started
the
busing
town.
around America and bringing up a bunch of homeless people up to Oregon and
Yes.
to join their community. And like what ended up happening was, for like one of the few rare times in American history, they decided like no new voter registrations can count for this vote because we suspect something is up and there's a conspiracy. So they denied all these new voters. And that is
Hmm.
just super, I feel like, shady on the government's part. Like they did not trust the Rajneeshis at
It
all.
is, but at the same time, the Rajneeshis were also drugging the homeless people to keep them in line.
Yeah, that was messed up. So they started like they started drugging the beers because the homeless people were not in their right mind. They were not mentally stable. They were violent and kind of ruining this whole like free love sex commune vibe. I'm sure like if you're trying to have a
Hmm.
meditation session and you just have like an angry homeless man breaking shit, it's like, wait, this is no longer free love. This is scary. So it's
Right.
like
But
they
not
had a
all of the
problem.
homeless, right. But not all of the homeless people had that mentality. I think they should have vetted them a little bit more to see, not just be like, oh, we have this, and this, and we promise you this, and this. They should have asked, who these people were. But I will say that because of that situation, Oregon now has a very large penitentiary out there because most of those homeless people, sadly enough, started causing trouble and went into jail, and they were overpopulated and had to create a very large state jail out there.
Oh, it's so tragic because like you see how in the documentary they just start like the Rajneeshi just start dumping the homeless people at random parks at night just to get them off of their
Right.
compound. And I was wondering, I was like, is that why Oregon we have such a bad homeless problem? Like, did it stem
It's
from the goddamn Rajneeshis?
it is part of it. Yeah, it is part of it. And a lot of those people, they did never go back home because how could they leave? They had no money. and they
Yeah.
had no way to get out. And some of those people, it's just really sad because they thought some of the homeless people came to Oregon thinking this was their fresh start. So they were going to have a roof over their heads and a means to survive and become, in a way, a part of society again. So they wanted to be a part of this Rajneesh society because it was the first time they'd ever had some stability in a while.
And acceptance and not being judged.
Right. And so they felt sort of worthy in a way. Not all of them, some of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like when they got kicked out of Oregon, when the Rajneeshis got kicked out, that wasn't just a loss for the Rajneeshis and the people who followed them, the people in this, or these sannyasas. It was also a loss for these homeless people. You know, they no longer had a roof over their head. They no longer had a community, and they lost their family in a sense.
Yeah. Can you imagine what kind of spiraling emotional thing that would put you through? Because you've had this way of life, you've had this community that you're proud of, and all of a sudden it's taken away because it's just not the norm. And that's what it frustrates us. And I think that's why we root for them. We root for that underdog. We root for the other. And it's just really obnoxious to see how we treated them.
I gotta say, and this is not a joke, but I literally wrote down in my notes, I was like, I need to look for a way that we can have this kind of environment without getting crazy.
Yeah. How do you control the balance? Because I think Sheila was a problem. Maybe she is a scapegoat, like you said, that it's just easy to put all of the violence on that one person. But it's just, it did get out of hand. And it's like this great social experiment that thrived for a little bit, but had so much oppression from the outside, and it cracked.
Right.
They internally started bickering. They internally started fighting, and they cracked.
I think the goal is to just keep it related to just keep it family. Like, I think for us, the way that it would work out is to just keep it to family only. So like, you know what? If one day we have the opportunity to buy some land and just keep it at us, I'm good with this.
Yes. Yeah. But then we'd be like, we need more workers because we're really overworked. And then we'll start bringing in people.
Like, I'm just too tired.
Yeah.
I can't run the garden anymore.
Like, you need a workforce to make that community run. And so like it does, it was really ambitious, and it was really cool. And it's kind of like probably why we like it. It's all this stuff we talk about. We talk about the idea of the thriving commune, and in watching Wild Wild Country, you get to see it play out a little bit and see like what it can provide for people on a spiritual level. And it seems like a little healthy. I mean, yeah, it's weird when you just see the footage of them like naked and screaming and writhing, but I'm like, I don't think I would be down for that room, but good for you.
What they don't talk about is that didn't really happen as much in Oregon. That was an old documentary that had come from this French man in the 1970s of something that had happened in part of the movement in India.
So it's like one room's party, just getting representatives, everything. Mm-hmm.
Yes. When most of the time that's not how it was. Apparently what he would have you do, and what I understand from not only the documentary, but what I read, was that it would be basically you're standing in a spot like out in the open, like in the fresh air where there's trees and the sun is shining and the wind is blowing. And you're coming to this space where you're grounding, and then you're releasing all the pent up energy by yelling and screaming whatever you feel that is pent up inside you. Not that anybody's listening, because you don't need Joe Schmo to listen. You need the universe to listen to you. So there was this mentality of releasing it out into the universe. The universe is taking it and recycling it, whatever. And then you no longer have to hold on to that bullshit anymore that's holding you back. And then at the end, they would just breathe deep and go into this deep meditative state. And that's being in that moment is where you find the enlightenment. That was their mentality.
Yeah. Which I think is cool. It's therapeutic.
And beautiful.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's very beautiful. It's no different than the magic that we do. You know, we write that shit down, we burn it, we let it go, and we don't think about it again.
Yeah. I think that they just needed their space to be themselves, and they were not allowed that. They kept being attacked.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And
Like you said, there are still groups out there, but there's something to be said about that unique moment in time in Oregon.
sure.
That was a really unique experience, and I am such an
Right.
empathetic person. Every time I listen to the people talk, like, what is it? Osho's lawyer. I love his interviews in the documentary. He is
Yeah.
so charming, and like he chokes up a lot because you can tell like that was like a magical time in his life, feeling like that
Yeah.
oneness, that love, that appreciation, like this hard work that he all put into that place. Like he's so into the movement still to this day. Like there are a lot of people in the
Yes.
interviews who are kind of, you could tell like, oh, a light bulb switched. That was me when I was younger. That was then, but not now. And it's like he still is holding on to
Yeah.
it. So I feel so empathetic for him. Like that was robbed from him.
Well, his background was that he was in the rat race of LA.
Mm-hmm.
He was in a high prior or high, my
Like
word
high
is,
profile.
yeah, high profile business, like in downtown LA, where it's fight or flight kind of mode constantly. You're trying to be the best, trying to be the best. And if you go back to what Osho's writing had said is, why are we always trying to be the best? That's the life of the ego. Why do we have to live the life of the ego?
Mm-hmm.
And when you're no longer living the life of the ego, you only crave that life without the ego.
Right.
So that poor attorney was like, oh, I want to go back to an ego-driven life.
I just imagine he was getting lots of ladies' attention all the time, and he's like, fuck, I have to give up this free love movement where I am like the lawyer, the shit, getting all this love and meditation and oneness. Like I remember there was one time like in the trials where he's just walking, you know, with a lady arm in arm, but like it's never creepy because it's like, I know these women have a choice and they're choosing this and they're happy, like we said. So it's not like the typical thing where the women are just objects.
Yeah, where you're just seen walking 10 feet behind the man.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you should feel your choice to believe what you want to believe. If you want to be a Christian, that's great for you if you choose that life.
Right. Yeah, that's the problem, is that each group, I think sometimes we get stuck in our own box and it's like, well, that is wrong and I'm right.
Right. I could go on and on talking about religion and how I felt persecuted my whole life about different things, but probably not a good idea.
I'm just glad we finally got to talk about the Rajneeshis. There's so much to be said about their time, and so many things I'm sure will come to mind after this conversation. Like, oh, we should talk about this. Oh, we should talk about this. But it's always fun. Like I was saying, you're the only one who sympathizes with them with me. I always scare other people. They're like, are you going to join a cult? And I'm like, no. I like my life too much to give up on my job and my relationships and my pets. Like, I just couldn't.
Right.
No.
Right. We've sort of integrated. I mean, we've been integrating into society our whole lives. Mm-hmm. So like, we know we have to work for the things that we want. Mm-hmm. But if I want to spend all day on my day off meditating and ignoring my life responsibilities, then that's my choice.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have to be an adult every single day. 365 days a year. That's just not me.
I know, like we get older, but we still feel like kids inside, I think is what happens.
Yeah. So if I want to meditate and do magic all day long, that's my business.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Is there anything else we should touch on?
I feel pretty content. This went a lot better than I thought it was going to go. I really thought I was going to say some really bad things.
You thought you were going to be offending the Christians of the podcast world?
Yes.
Well, it's good that you're being thoughtful. Like you said, there are Christian witches. Maybe we do have Christian listeners out there, and I know we have Christian friends and family. Like, it's not always about like, oh, every person in this group is evil. It's just this like you do feel backed into a corner sometimes, so a little defensive, like make room for myself, make room for others. Like, you do feel that way. So I think that's what it is sometimes, and where we come from.
Yeah, I just feel like everybody's feelings are valid, and I've always wanted this coven to be a safe space for everybody.
Yeah. So we're trying to be more
You know,
thoughtful.
yeah, just like the Rajneeshis, I want everyone to feel welcome,
Yes.
regardless of your status, regardless of your color or your belief system or your sexual orientation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're all welcome.
Sighs.
Join my cult.
Yeah,
No,
join our
I'm just
cult.
kidding.
Other people might think we're sinister and weird, so maybe we are a cult. The Cousins Cult is the new podcast.
Not cult, it's a commune and a way of life.
Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I know Wild Wild Country came out a while ago, and that was probably the last time this topic was super popular, and it took us a minute to get here, but
yeah,
we, like Woody said, we've always wanted to talk about it, and I'm so glad we did.
yeah, me too.
Yay. I really want us to time travel there for like a week.
just
Maybe
I feel like we totally could. We just need $700 and a plane ticket to go join them today.
Yeah, it just wouldn't be
for a
the
little
same.
bit.
I feel like it would just be like a meditation week, but we still would probably have fun.
I would have an amazing time. And I didn't even mention that they were vegetarians. They are vegetarians, so they live that vegetarian lifestyle as a choice. So
I did notice like the people living on that particular commune were very fit. Like it looks like a lifestyle where you're burning every fucking calorie. Like you're working so hard physically, you're meditating, you're moving every day. You have probably this routine in this schedule, and it's like the last time I ever felt like that was when I went to Girl Scout camp when I was like maybe in my tweens, and it's like we walked around all day in the forest, did all these crafts, like we are hiking. By the time it was time for our group meal, like you ate it up so fast because your body needs calories and you're burning it. I'm like, I haven't known hard work like that in a long time.
I mean, the last time I was like that when I was like in my early 30s, but it was because I was clubbing all the time. And so I was like, I would eat one meal a day and then drink the rest of my calories, and I would just be dancing hardcore, dancing out all my stress. It's great.
Yeah, like I think that lifestyle looks cool because I am just fairly lazy. I'm fairly individualistic. So this idea of like working hard for a common goal in a community, earning every calorie and burning all the calories, it just looks like really cool and
it is
and fun.
And hiking, they had a lot of land to hike on, so they went and did lots of things.
Yeah. Maybe I'm glamorizing them, and maybe people are screaming as they're listening to this episode that I am way too sympathetic, and for that I apologize.
Or nobody really cares.
Yeah.
About our
opinions.
Yeah.
If you've made it this far, you're not offended. I'm gonna assume.
Yes.
Well, this will probably be a long episode.
It's okay. Follow our Patreon. We don't know what we're talking about next, so we love your ideas.
Ideas, questions, paranormal experiences. Yeah, send them into cousinscoven2@gmail.com. We'll have all of our links below. If you do want to sign up for a newsletter, you want to check out some merch, join the Patreon. Look all below for all that.
Yeah. And may you find happiness in your heart, love for yourself, and join each other. Blessings to all.